You want to follow your passion. You want to make a living from the things that you care about. And so what do? You go away, you build the product, you build the service, and then you offer it. You find customers online, and then you try and sell on your social media platforms or website. But what happens when you go through that whole process, and as the years go on, the game changes, the goalposts have moved, and now all those things that you did, that website that you had, is now out of date. Those social media platforms have changed their algorithm, and your posts are no longer served to even your own subscribers. The whole paradigm has shifted. We're not living in, for example, 1999 anymore, or whenever, just pick a random date in the past. But certainly now it's a whole different ball game to what it was. So I just want to talk about that whole process of the grind and the constant need to update and maintain, and you can let me know what you think about it. So basically, I've been on an artistic journey for the last 2 decades to go from part-time to full-time. I've had a few bouts where I've actually had enough work to do that, but for the most part, I've never realised the goal, and I'm having to supplement my income in other ways. And something I've noticed recently is that things have got tough. Things have started getting tougher and tougher. Obviously, AI, increased competition, just the whole system in which I guess you could say my endeavours were built on has kind of changed. I've just noticed that things are no longer effective, and I suppose expectations from customers and people in general are just so different now. I think the internet, just in as a whole, has become such a big part of people's lives, and now just the way people use things and the things people want is just different to what it was, and you can't get away with just having something that's good. You've got to have something that's great, and only then people are going to sit back and take notice. And it's not just me, it's not just the website in general. I think about stuff like even films, like movies. So people like movies, they've always liked movies. The human race will always care about stories and narratives in general. But have you noticed people don't really like a lot of the old films these days? They can't keep up with it. It's just they were done at a certain time when special effects weren't so good, or the pacing of stories was a bit slower. People's attention spans have changed. People's expectations have changed. And so films in general have kind of shifted such that, you need to be really good. You need to keep hooking people's attention, and you need to keep delivering just a whole satisfying story arc. People aren't going to watch an old film from the 1950s, not young people at least, and actually really care. They're going to find it's dragging on a bit. They're going to think, oh, these camera angles aren't dynamic like I'm used to. This editing isn't as sharp as I'm used to. The sound effects, the music, the delivery of the script itself isn't as good as modern day things. And at the end of the day, that's inevitable. There's going to be progress. Things are going to get better. We have the entire history of movies up until this point to look back on and to see what's working, see what's not, and then create new products which basically build on the back of everything that's come before it. And that is just how things go. But what do you do when you're sort of part of this whole process of trying to achieve something, and then during the process, the actual standard changes? So it's not a case such that, the next generation can build on the previous generation's ideas and products, but now we're at a point where you have to build upon your own products and ideas, and you have to do it pretty quick because the pace of change with things on the internet is such that it is so quick. So I had built a website way back in like 1999, I think, and it had a few updates since, and I spent a long time building it. Again, this was back in the days before social media, before YouTube. I didn't have any help. I had to literally learn how to code if I wanted to make a good website. Obviously, back in the day, websites were pretty poor. It was very basic, like very low standard, very low aesthetic quality. You would get just annoying websites which you just had to put up with because there wasn't an alternative. No one had really thought about laying out a website like a well-crafted magazine, really, at the time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was able to come in, learn how to code, learn how to make a good website. And this whole process of me making what I thought was a really good website at the time, it took a long time to do. It took several months for me to learn the whole skill of website construction. And I was really pleased with what I'd managed to produce. People would go to my website at the time and they would say, this is the best website I have ever seen. Like, imagine that doing that now, where people thought your website was so good that they would leave a comment like that. And I'm not necessarily saying that at the time it was the best website ever, but I think compared to my sort of peers, my competitors within this sort of art and design space, it was good. I think really good for its time. And just the fact that it had little things that some people didn't even realize you could do, like have, it had like a little animated character mascot that would basically talk out the links when you clicked them, and it was more like a sort of video game user interface as much as it was an information site. And the whole way it was presented, the structuring whereby it used, I won't go into the details, but it used frames, which is now like a redundant sort of HTML Web 1.0 technology, which no one really used it the way I was doing it. I was really pioneering a lot of techniques, despite the fact that it was ultimately a personal portfolio website and an info site just about me. It never gained huge traction. It wasn't known in the world for being the best website, but those that did find it appreciated it, and that was all good. Now, fast forward to 2025, and that website isn't going to cut it. I did redesign the entire website using WordPress back in, I think it was probably about 10 years ago now. It was a while ago. And again, I went out into the world. I didn't just pick a generic template off the peg, but I saw a website that I really liked. I found out the sort of template that they use for WordPress. Then I basically modified that myself with what little coding skills that I still could kind of remember and that were still relevant. And I remade a website a while ago, and that was good. But again, 10 years later, and now the standards have changed. People want that quick, right, this is it, this is what this is about. I want to go to this website, I want to find this bit of information, I want it quick. And the whole way in which people think about websites, like with movies, has just changed. It's been updated. People don't have the patience to be presented with, for example, a pretty picture off the bat, just to be like, oh, okay, this is a landing page where I get the gist, and then it's up to me to now explore the different offerings, the different links. People want to just go to a website and think, right, that is what I want, that is what I'm here for. I don't want to read through walls of text. I haven't got time for that. I just want everything quick and presented in an efficient, aesthetically pleasing way. And like, my website is still doing that to a degree, but I kind of feel like it needs a refresh and needs an update. So that's something I'm going to need to think about. And then that's the website, that's the personal website side of things. And then for my social medias, again, I was using social medias pretty early back in the day, back when you could post on Instagram, and, just if you were a new person to Instagram, you would get 50 to 100, 150 likes on a post, if it was good enough. And then, that kind of changed. A few years went by and it was difficult to maybe get 10 likes on a post. I'm just saying, sort of as a metric to measure against. And so you would have to put in the effort. You'd have to, like other people's stuff, comment on other people's stuff, kind of build a sort of following to gain the audience. You'd have to really think more about the descriptions in your posts, maybe how to add better keywords and hashtags, which became a thing. And I did that for a while. I was really prolific on Instagram and other social platforms. And I got to a point where my posts for a while would get 1,000 likes and 10 to 20 comments a go. Again, fast forward to now, things have changed. I can post on Instagram and I would be lucky to get 10 to 20 likes on a post. Very, very lucky to ever get one single comment and interaction. And this whole idea of me posting a pretty picture that I had produced, as an artist, like, that ship has sailed. You can't do that anymore. People don't want that. In the same way people don't want black and white films anymore. We don't do that anymore. So, it's Instagram now, really, unless you're posting video, it's going to be very, very difficult to build an audience. And unless that video content is very specifically constructed in such a way that it has, all the marketing terms attached to it, like following trends, and has hooks, and, sustains engagement, and, has ASMR or some kind of thing that's going to effectively psychologically manipulate people into caring about that Instagram post, and you can then still later start injecting pictures into your news feed as you sort of carry on. But you do need these ways to market yourself. A picture on its own just isn't enough, especially in the age of AI, where anyone could prompt an AI tool to create amazing pictures, and anyone could even ask ChatGPT to write a pretty amazing description for that image as well. The whole thing has changed. And talking about me personally with the artistic journey, I think about just my artwork in general. Now, getting good at artwork is tricky. Like, it's not an easy task for even the most gifted, talented people. I've always felt like I had a passion for art, or for wanting to be good at art at least, but I was never really good at it. So I'd have to practice a lot, and being a bit of a perfectionist, I would probably spend too much time polishing the artwork instead of moving on to the next piece, which probably would have helped me level up quicker. But either way, I got to a point where I could eventually make artwork as good as the things that I initially looked up to when I was a kid. So there was a standard of artwork back in the 80s and 90s when I grew up, whereby if you did that standard, you could be professional. That was the goal, to get that good that you could then do professional artwork. So I always had that in mind, and I thought, right, okay, like with my websites, I looked at websites around me at the time, and I tried to make a website as good as that or better, so that I could, promote my work. And I did that for artwork. I saw what there was at the time, and I diligently worked on my whole craft such that I got good enough to do the things that I wanted to do. In my case, create artwork like the covers of video game art or magazine pages that I saw back in the day. Yeah, like cartoons, comics, things like that, that just, I wanted to create something like that. And I got to a point where I felt like, you know what, now I think I can compete. I think I can do this. And I did do this. And over the course of like the last few decades of working professionally, part-time at least, as an artist, I had people that liked what I was doing, and they would pay me to create artwork for their projects, whether it was a book or an advert, or even graphic design and website design stuff, since I had learned how to code to some degree back in the day. So that's great, but this whole idea of like things changing and things changing rapidly then puts a lot of strain on people like myself, people who want to sustain a career, or even gain even more momentum so they can turn this from just a part-time to a full-time endeavor, or even from a no time to a part-time endeavor if you happen to be in that situation. Because you go out there into the world and you learn to, in my case, create good products, good artwork that you apply to products, then a good platform to display those products, whether it's a website or, you kind of build out a social media presence. And then now I'm at a point where, even though I've done that, I feel like the standard of art that I kind of now need to produce is not good enough. The website that I am showing it on is not good enough. The way that I display my social media posts is just not good enough. It's not up to par. And just the products themselves, like, you can't necessarily get away with just having, being an artist and maybe selling art prints, for example, because again, AI is a thing, and you now have to compete with all of that. So the whole game has just changed. So what do you do about that? Now, firstly, I haven't got a solution. I can't tell you how to mitigate this issue of redundancy over time. But what I can say, from having 2 decades of seeing the world change throughout my lifetime, and just seeing how, when I can talk about, films and movies from the 1950s, you can just look back in history and you can see, obviously, that things progress, things change, standards and expectations elevate, and I can't see any sign of that stopping. But this is more me just acknowledging that fact, and basically saying to anyone who is interested now in looking to start exploring their passion and to maybe turn that into a business to make a living from, that I don't think there is a way to do the thing you want to do and then basically just go on autopilot with it. Now, there might be, there probably are people who they gain enough sort of notoriety such that they get very successful. I'm not one of those people. The 1%ers, as I call them, who just are so good at what they do at the time that even if there is a dip, even if the standards and expectation does change, and the market is harder for them to sell their wares or get their jobs or whatever, it doesn't matter, because they already have the foot in the door. They already are succeeding. And it's like, if a millionaire now only, someone who, let's just say, earns £1 million or dollars or euros or whatever currency you want to use, let's just say they earn £1 million a year. If they're now only earning £800,000 a year, I mean, £200,000 loss per year is significant. That's a lot of money. That's way more than the average person would ever dream of earning. But for them, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world. For someone who's maybe only earning £20,000 from their artwork, if they then are losing sort of, 5, 10, 20% year on year, and it gets to the point where they're now only earning £10,000, like that is an issue. That is the I can no longer survive off of this endeavor type of issue. So it becomes quite a significant problem. So, like I say, I haven't got the solution to this. All I can say is that it is annoying for anyone to work a job whereby there is a kind of an ever-changing ceiling to it. Like, you can't just reach the top and then enjoy the spoils of your accomplishments of your journey. You can't just get to the destination after sacrificing a lot over the course of 10 to 20 years, maybe, to build your business, to engage in your passion. You can't do that and then be like, right, finally I've got there. I finally made it. I am doing the thing that I want to do. And then just sit in that nice, comfortable place and feel like, yeah, this has all been worth it. This is great. Because things are going to change. Like, the only way you can enjoy it is if you've made your millions at that point, and then, you're just living your life, enjoying your life, and money isn't really a thing. But if you never quite got there, if you were working at something and you felt like this was hard, and I've had to work really hard, over not just years but decades to get to where I want to get, but now it's still, got harder still. You're forever playing catch up. You're forever chasing that success. And I was thinking about this with YouTube channels and things as well, how it used to be the case 10, 15 years ago where people would say, look, if you do want to build a YouTube channel, that's fine. You don't have to. You didn't need to. Like I say, back when I was doing my artistic endeavors, I could get by just on my own personal website and using Instagram, or these kind of scrollable basic picture platform social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, stuff like that. I feel like YouTube is a bit more key to running particularly an art business, or any business, or just any business in general. I think now needs a human involved with it, with the coming onslaught of AI and stuff like that. But things have changed with YouTube, and you no longer have to grind away and produce, 20 to 50 mediocre videos in order to gain a significant following of, say, 10,000 people or whatever. because there's just so much competition, there's so much demand on the platform. And even though, yeah, there's more users, there's still more demand per creator. It's such that people have started saying, maybe a year ago, they started saying, well, look, you're not going to get success overnight. You're not going to get success within 3 to 6 months anymore. You might have to be grinding at this over the course of a year. You might have to produce 100 videos and do this whole video production thing on YouTube for a year. And you think, oh, that is a long time, but okay. But I would say now that's no longer the case. It's more the case such that a lot of people, I think, are going to need to grind at it. They're going to need to produce YouTube video contents if you are a content creator for maybe 3 years until you start building that, significant following of, say, 10,000 people who genuinely care about what you're doing. Depends on your niche and all that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about from my perspective of what I'm specifically doing with my sort of standard, my level of artwork and my levels of experience, things like that. But I would imagine in the future, give it a couple of years and people will start saying, you just got to do it. You just got to be in it for 6 years and then eventually you might have success. And then a few years after that, if you just do it for 10 years, a few years after that. Look, if you just try doing YouTube for 50 years, then eventually you can have your 10,000 subscribers and, start to get something going or whatever. And obviously, when you look at the past and then project into the future, you start to feel like, is this whole thing even viable now? It brings up some questions. And yeah, it can be pretty overwhelming, pretty daunting to know that, the future is going to get hard. I mean, just on the subject of YouTube, I feel like give it 2 or 3 years and new creators getting anywhere on the platform is going to just pretty much vanish. I feel like even now it's getting tough, but there's a little bit of potential opportunity, perhaps. But you're going to get to a point where it's like, look, if you ever want anyone to ever see your content on the big platforms, the big social media platforms like YouTube, you're going to have to pay for it. You're going to have to pay to play. And this is difficult if you're new to everything and if you just don't have the budget, you don't have the money, you're going to struggle. I'm in a position where I've just about barely managed to get by, but I've had to make a lot of sacrifices to do that. I haven't had the lavish holidays, the luxury purchases, and just the easy kind of 9 to 5 grind. Not easy, but such that you go into work, you do your work, you come home, and even if you have a bad day and you're not very productive, you still get paid. When you're kind of working for yourself, you don't have that. You have a bad day. If you're ill, if you have sickness or some ailment, mental or physical, and maybe you need to take a week off, you don't get paid for it. So you have that added pressure on top, and yeah, I think the whole pressure just kind of mounts up after a while. So yeah, this is a bit of a doom and gloom type video, really, where I'm pointing out some of the negative sides of pursuing the passion. It isn't easy. You don't grind and grind and grind and climb and climb and climb, and eventually you get to that peak, that mountaintop peak, and then you just enjoy the view for forever to come. It's like, to continue that analogy, it's like a new mountain just kind of rises up and sort of, puts you back down the bottom, and then you've got to climb back up to the next peak, and that seems to just keep happening over and over in this kind of never-ending loop, basically. So yeah, that's just something to look forward to or not, to understand that whole process is going to happen, and you can't ever stay stagnant. You can't ever feel like you want to create the best ever, whatever it is, product, piece of artwork, in my case, YouTube video, film, as I've discussed. You can't just create the best thing and then it just stay the best thing forever. Generally, like I say, there's the 1%ers out there that are gonna go off and create a classic, a thing that's going to stand the test of time. But just being realistic for the rest of us, I think the grind and the pace of change is going to continually happen, and I feel like we're just going to have to be a part of it. So I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that made some sense. Hopefully that kind of gives more of an understanding of sort of where I've been, what I'm doing, and what you potentially might expect if you decide to go on your own journey of passion. And just so you know, we're in this together. You know, it's not an easy path, but hopefully, as long as you know that there are people out there who are also doing it, you know, there's something to relate to and to appreciate from others. So, you know, hope you enjoyed the video, and hope to see you again in a future one.